YEP thus far has been an interesting journey with both interesting opportunities as well as challenges. It has been a process that has helped all of us to better understand the context, the needs, and the priorities. It is also a process that has shown what is working well and the potential to achieve more, and what would require us to put our heads together to adjust and make it better. And part of the conversations you were having this morning were precisely earmarked to try and look at things from that perspective. But I wanted to share with you a little bit of what the project has achieved up to this point. YEP has already supported more than 1,000 youths through skills development, entrepreneurship, and access to finance. The project counts more than 20 implementing partners delivering work across all sectors and geographies. YEP has also assisted close to 200 micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in strengthening their capacity. The mini grant scheme has been launched and will facilitate access to finance for rural youth entrepreneurs and create youth-friendly products and services together with selected credit unions. A second scheme, the mini loan scheme, is currently under preparation and should come on stream in the very near future. In parallel, together, we were able to develop a youth and trade roadmap to identify skills needed and entrepreneurship opportunities for ICT, tourism, and agribusiness sectors. And just a short while ago, we heard exactly what the issues that have been identified and would need to be addressed going forward. I certainly would desire to see that all this is part of the conversation we have when we meet tomorrow as part of the steering committee to see precisely what it is that we can do. What we have done with today's findings is to take a market-led approach in the context of YEP project for the years to come. It is also a process that builds on efforts made so far, having laid the foundation the last few months, accelerating delivery of results and impact is going to be key. I think everybody was patient the last few months to try and see the project getting started. But it is now incumbent on all of us to make sure that we show people what it is that we can do in more concrete ways than we have done at this point. The task, therefore, before us is to ensure that not only are we responding to the priorities, but in a very innovative way, trying to respond to the needs. One aspect I shared with colleagues this morning was what my lesson has been from all that we have done is perhaps a reaffirmation of the different situational circumstances that we are confronted with on the implementation side on a day-to-day basis. And Gambia is no exception. It's very different, and I think we have to take a very innovative approach to finding viable solutions that will be meaningful and deliver on the results, keeping within the framework of what we have committed with those that have provided the funding in terms of the delivery. The Youth and Trade Roadmap seek to bolster competitiveness through youth empowerment while integrating important value chain development priorities, the need to improve productivity and quality, to improve technical and vocational skills, to improve market reach and diversification, and facilitate entrepreneurship. What we wanted to do, which perhaps all of us at the high table are trying to come back on every time we have an opportunity to do so, is to do this in an inclusive way. And I wanted to say thank you so much to all of you for the input you provided in terms of coming up with a strategy, but more importantly, for being here the whole day to discuss the details of what we really needed to do in terms of taking the work forward. The roadmap provides a framework to implement the priorities, actions identified in the National Development Plan. And I think this is an important aspect to understand that YEP is only one of the interventions that responds to many, many aspects that have been identified as part of the blueprint that was launched this morning. We cannot be the answer to all the interventions, and we need to make sure that we are leveraging the synergies across and making sure that we are working in a coordinated and cohesive manner to respond to issues that go beyond generating trade and employment, because I don't think youth issues can really be confined just to that particular segment. They go way, way beyond. And this is something that we have to look at in the context of the broader framework that has been launched this morning. Our work in reinforcing training programs in the areas that represent opportunities for youth employment and self-employment, such as agropreneurship, tourism services, or linkages with information and technology, such as mobile phone repair, solar and satellite installations, is all part of what we desire to do as part of the next phase. And finally, our actions in reinforcing the quality and market compliance of products and services offered by young entrepreneurs, along with reinforcing MSME productive capacities, are crucial for a lasting effect on job creation. I have, through all this, given you an overview, but I also said earlier on, it was a first step. And what we really need to do is to reinforce the urgent need for measures to offer economic opportunities for our youth. It is very clear that time is against us. It is very clear from the conversations I've been having in this particular situation that the youth's expectations are really high, and we have to see how we address those expectations. It is also a fact that, globally speaking, focus on youth employment is not encouraging across all regions and countries, and Gambia is no exception. The African Competitiveness Report reveals that Africa will need to create 450 million jobs by 2035, whereas the current policies will only generate 100 million jobs. So the evidence is there with us. What is crucial is that we put our efforts together to promote the jobs for youth and implement actions at all levels, from local to the national, to the regional, and to the global levels. With the growing number of youth entering the labor market and limited job opportunities for them, unemployment, disengagement are threatening sustainable development and social stability, and cause people to migrate in search of jobs. I know that this cause is a top priority for the Gambia, for the region, for the continent, and certainly for the UN. And today, we could not be more privileged at this event to have the presence of the UN Secretary General's Youth Envoy to give us her perspective. Thank you so much for joining us. With these few words, I wish to thank you all, and very much looking forward to implementing the recommendations that you have put before us. Thank you very much.
I had the pleasure to meet all these 3 days. It's as I said, it's an honor to be here among you today. I don't wish to speak a lot because I think the most important perspectives from the side of the young people have been raised by you, and from our side as UN and as institutions has been very well raised by Dorothy. So if I am to repeat what I was to say, I would sound like a broken record. So I thought I will bring a little bit of the global perspective to the table, Dorothy, because in the last 6 months as the Secretary General's Envoy on Youth, I've been able to interact with young people across all continents, across all regions, in different levels. And we've had a number of initiatives at the UN headquarters to try to bring the voices of young people to the global processes we are having. And as most of you know, and as it's been said again and again, that we are right now going through a phase where the world is having the largest number of young people, the largest generation of young people in the history of the world. We right now have about 1.8 billion people, young people, most of whom live in the developing countries, and it poses a challenge and also at the same time an opportunity to countries like Gambia, the countries in Africa and Asia and other parts of the developing world, to really harness that potential and realize that potential and use the energy that young people have to offer in a positive way to the contribution of the countries, the societies, and overall to the world. However, even if this is the case, I always like to say that this is the best of the times to be a young person and the worst of the times. This is the best of the times because we are the largest generation ever. We are the most connected generation ever. We have access to information like no other generations did. We are connected than any other generation before us. But also at the same time, we have about 71 million young people who are unemployed, 600 million young people living in conflict-affected areas, 400 million people not having access to healthcare. So it's really the best of the times and the worst of the times, and how we realize that potential that lies in both of these worlds will really define what history will write about us those who were responsible of making those decisions. As Dorothy said, in order to have jobs for all the young people we have in the world as of now, by 2020 the world has to create at least 600 million new jobs, which sounds impossible. And it really is in our hands, I think, as young people, to be as innovative as possible, as creative as possible, and as the Minister of Youth said yesterday at Sherman, to be job creators, not to be job seekers. So I can see that you have already embarked on that path, and I commend you for that. I also want to especially recognize the EU for financing that initiative, because from my experience, not everyone believes in the power of young people, not everyone believes in what young people can do, and those investments, those resources that coming into investments of young people is very important. And as it was said, beyond employment, we should also see how we can bring cross-sectorial partnerships into these conversations to foster a holistic approach to youth development if we are to expect an empowered citizen as much as an empowered business person. Globally, one of the biggest problem that young entrepreneurs face is financing, as it was said over and over again. The second one would be the kind of discrimination that we have to face because of our age. Most often young people are not taken seriously because they are young, and young women face an extra layer of discrimination because they are women. So I think policymakers should really go that extra step to understand and realize that because of our age we face discrimination, and to facilitate our participation and make sure that we also have the
experts
right.
From the International Trade Centre, ITC, and all the stakeholders involved in the elaboration process of the roadmap, as it was discussed today, which is extremely comprehensive, detailed, and very pragmatic. This quality piece of work has been produced in the YEP spirit, that is to say, through a very participative and consultative process, taking into account the voices of all stakeholders, private and public, and above all, the voices of the youth. Congratulations for that. The EU furthermore thanks YEP and the ITC for having created this opportunity to take the time to discuss thoroughly a very important topic for the country: how to reconcile trade and the youth in the Gambia. What could be the most beneficial path for a country like the Gambia to go from being an entrepreneur trade and re-export nation to a comprehensive, growing economy, leveraging the potential of its youth. Once again, this is all about the motto of the YEP project, Youth Empowerment, Unlocking Potential to Create Wealth. As you may know, YEP Gambia is funded through the EU Emergency Trust Fund with the objective to tackle the economic root causes of irregular migration through increased job opportunities for youth. With a budget of €11 million, YEP aims at supporting directly and indirectly about 100,000 young people. The YEP is therefore part of an effort of the EU to turn the youth dividend into opportunities for the new Gambia. Ladies and gentlemen, both the government of the Gambia through the National Development Plan and the EU as a financial and technical partner of the country recognise youth empowerment and employment as a strategic priority. In its national strategy, the government is committed to leave no youth behind and recognises that youth are an engine of growth and will be the essential pillar for any development. The EU is fully supportive of the Gambia National Development Plan and is already working in collaboration with a range of partners on initiatives that support the NDP's objectives. The EU's National Indicative Plan for 2017-2020 selected inclusive sustainable growth and job creation as one of its 3 priority sectors. Our work with the ITC on the Youth Empowerment Project falls under this priority, which also encompasses many other projects. Under the title of Inclusive Sustainable Growth and Job Creation of its National Indicative Plan, the EU takes a holistic view by looking across the spectrum at the multiple barriers to inclusive growth in the country. Following this approach, the EU is also working, for instance, on an Agriculture for Economic Growth project with the Ministry of Agriculture and the FAO, and is also in the process of starting a project focusing specifically on job creation for youth and women, alongside improving access to finance, and this will be worked on together with the United Nations Capital Development Fund and the ITC. Beyond the contribution of the EU on the inclusive growth agenda, the roadmap discussed and validated today is determinant of the future of the Gambia. The country is indeed in the process of renewing its economic model to fit with the demographic transition it's experiencing. In this context, the methodology used to create the roadmap may be useful as it shows the multi-dimensional nature of the challenges to be addressed to build an environment for inclusive economic growth. These include access to electricity, access to financial institutions, access to quality technical and vocational training, reduction of the skills mismatch, enhancement of the investment in ICT to improve the competitiveness constraints of MSMEs. The list is long. The hopes and expectations of the youth, including the returnees, should be met, and this increases the need to adopt measures for entry job creation. And this is why it's so important not only to listen to the conclusions and recommendations of the Strategic Youth and Trade Development Roadmap, but it's also very important to put them into action. Thank you for your attention.
The Honourable Minister of Trade, Industry, Regional Integration, Employment, Dr. Aïssatou Touré, the Youth Envoy of the UN Secretary General, Mrs. Jayatma. I understand she is catching her flight at this very moment. The Deputy Executive Director of the International Trade Center, Ms. Dorothy Tembo, the representative of the Ambassador of the European Union to the Gambia, Mr. Darren Saxton, hereby ably representing Mr. Lajos, the UN Resident Coordinator, Mama Ade, my colleague Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Trade, Industry, Regional Integration and Employment, Mrs. Nafi Berry, heads of institutions and departments, youth representatives, members of the press, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege and honor for me to represent my minister, who is very, very enterprising, but of course he is very dynamic, who is no other person than Honorable Henry Gomez, who have asked me to deliver a statement on this very important occasion on his behalf, and it reads as follows. More than 2/3 of our population are young Gambians. Developing our nation therefore means investing in our youth. Promotion of youth-centered and youth-driven development agenda is at the core of my ministry. The government of His Excellency President Barrow shares this very important perspective. This is why our new National Development Plan, which has been officially launched this morning at the State House grounds, has a specific strategic goal on youth empowerment. I am therefore very pleased that youth empowerment has moved center stage in the new Gambia. Too many young Gambians can't find a job or are underemployed. Too many young Gambians have left home and are seeking opportunities elsewhere. Young Gambians migrating to urban centers in pursuit of jobs, and many young men decided to leave our country through, of course, the perilous backway journeys. If we want to stem this immigration, it is not enough to tell our sons and daughters that the backway journey is risky or that the opportunities in Europe do not exist. If we want to keep Gambians at home, we need to create economic opportunities that provide perspectives and allow our youth to have a decent livelihood. I'm therefore very pleased that we now have a roadmap that looks at both the interests of youth as well as the economic opportunities that are available. To activate these opportunities, the Youth and Trade Roadmap has a number of key levers that will have a positive impact on the integration of young people into our economy. First, it fosters self-employment and entrepreneurship. The young generation needs to be equipped with a new mindset, with a business development attitude, and entrepreneurial skills to become their own engine for growth. Second, it enhances skills development. Training institutions are an essential catalyst that should equip the young people with skills that are most required by priority sectors. We need to ensure that graduates have acquired relevant skills, but it's equally important that the quality of skills training is in keeping with best international standards. Third, we have to create more jobs. The private sector plays an essential role in this endeavor. We need to create more partnerships and improve productive capacities and efficiencies in our value chains. If Gambian companies, particularly micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises become more competitive, they will grow and create more jobs. And finally, we need to improve the youth representation in all sectors. The needs, aspirations, and ideas of young Gambians need to find their way into the design and implementation of developing strategies, both in the public and private sectors. We need more pro-youth policies to create and sustain all these areas of action and provide an anchor for further assistance. The Youth and Trade Roadmap provides a framework to activate these 4 levers I have already mentioned. The Youth Empowerment Project, commonly known as YEP, will use these roadmaps as the blueprint to implement activities to reinforce youth skills, foster entrepreneurship, and create employment opportunities for the youth along selected value chains. Mr. Chairperson, I also encourage all the development partners to adopt this framework to ensure all efforts to maximize the benefits for our youth. But most importantly, I call on all of you, the youth, to make this roadmap your own. The plans have been developed through an inclusive but as well consultative process that involves all stakeholders. Equally, the result will depend on our ability to work together and to make it a reality. In conclusion, on behalf of the Minister for Youth and Sports and on my own behalf, I'm expressing our full support to make this a success. I also want to sincerely thank the YEP project team, the International Trade Center, and our partner, the Ministry of Trade, for this initiative and progress so far. My special gratitude goes to the European Union for the generous funding. On this note, I have a quote, and this quote is from the famous artist who is an icon, Jimmy Cliff, and he once mentioned that treat the youths right or you're putting on a fight, or treat youths right, you're sitting on a dynamite. On that note, I thank you.
Minister of Youth and Sports, Honorable Henry Gomez, ably represented by his permanent secretary, Mr. Dauda Sise, Youth Envoy of the Secretary General, Ms. Jayathma Wakramanake, Deputy Executive Director of the International Trade Center, Ms. Dorothy Tembo, the Ambassador of the European Union to the Gambia, Mr. Attila Lejos, ably represented by Daryl Sexton, Resident Coordinator of the United Nations, my sister Ade Mumanyani Lekotji, the UN Country Director, the Permanent Secretary, Minister of Trade, Regional Integration and Employment, Nafi Bari, heads of institutions and departments, group representatives, members and team of the Youth Empowerment Project, members of the press, excellencies, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. Today marks an important milestone in the Gambia's drive to promote youth employment. We have come to the end of an extensive consultative process which has helped us identify needs and priorities for youth-centered economic development. The Republic of the Gambia's Strategic Youth and Trade Development Roadmap have identified trade sectors, growth potential, and economic opportunities for the youth. The roadmap defines development priorities and related plans of actions in 4 pillars, namely related to skills, development, entrepreneurship, and self-employment and market-led value chain development and sector coordination. Ladies and gentlemen, the validation of the Strategic Youth and Trade Development Roadmaps could not be timelier. Just this morning, His Excellency, the President of the Republic of the Gambia, Adama Barrow, has officially launched our nation's new National Development Plan. The National Development Plan contains 8 strategic priorities. 2 of them relate directly to youth and trade, namely, reaping the demographic dividend through an empowered youth. Secondly, making the private sector the engine of growth, transformation, and job creation. In addition, the National Development Plan aims to modernize agriculture, to promote culture and tourism, and invest in people. Information and communication technologies, ICT, have been identified as one of the critical enablers for the success of the National Development Plan. Ladies and gentlemen, my ministry therefore considers the Youth and Trade Roadmap as a guiding compass to bolster competitiveness and to create income and opportunities for youths in the Gambia. The roadmap includes an action plan with concrete activities and priorities for integrating value chain development that will enable the youth to access business opportunities in the targeted sectors. Specifically, it provides recommendations on improving productivity and quality, technical and vocational skills, market access and diversification, and it facilitates youth entrepreneurship. I want to thank our partners, the International Trade Center and the European Union, for the support provided at this critical time to help us create and provide these opportunities for young people of the Gambia and the young population. Ladies and gentlemen, we face a pressing need to reconcile our youth and trade sector in support of employment and market growth. The present roadmap addresses this need through two areas of intervention. First, it prioritizes specific sectors of the economy that represent particular potential and that have been selected through key criteria. These criteria encompass quantitative factors such as export potential and existing demand, and key qualitative aspects such as the possibility for youth employment. Priority sectors represent inherent success potential for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises. MSEs willing to engage in them and will ultimately generate much-needed jobs for our youth in the Gambia. Second, the roadmap provides a set of concrete and realistic actions to increase self-employment and entrepreneurship and align education with employment needs while bridging policy and institutional gaps at the national level. In order to reconcile youth and the trade opportunities, there is a need to rethink Gambia's economic sector base on a market-led approach, skills development, and prioritization of actions. This is especially the case with re-export and the tourism sector, which will need to undergo a transformation. Development of more inclusive tourism services upriver, associated with cultural and community-based tourism, which will need to undergo a transformation. Development of more inclusive tourism products through the strengthening of cultural and community-based tourism services upriver, associated with revamped services in the coastal area, will help diversify the tourism offering and bring greater benefits to the youthful population. In parallel, transition to higher value services such as ICT can help the country to retain and build on this reputation as a regional trade hub. In addition, being the largest employer for the youth, agriculture offers untapped growth potentials in agro-processing. By moving from subsistence agriculture to a more formally structured agricultural production and commercialization with transformation capacities, youths will have a greater chance to engage in the local agro-value chains. Finally, cross-sector energy synergies and market linkages between private sector actors of the tourism, agriculture, and ITC industries will put the development wheel in motion. However, it is vital that we listen carefully to our young population in order to plan this transition. Of course, like Jimmy Cliff said, I don't have to mention. If we don't include youth, you know what we are sitting on. Prioritizing those sectors that have the highest potential to generate decent jobs, but also that are appealing to the aspirations of young Gambians. I am therefore very pleased that the development of the roadmap followed a very inclusive process with the participation of youth representatives from Banjul to Basse, with the voices of men and women, with the inputs from the public and the private sector, as well as the civil society. Ultimately, the success of this roadmap will depend on our ability to work together, young and old, and activate these opportunities. Together, we can create the Gambia of tomorrow, where everybody has the opportunity to pursue his and her dreams and have a decent living. A Gambia where no young person would even think about taking the back way. I thank you for your kind attention and looking forward to the successful implementation of the roadmap of the Gambia Strategic Youth and Trade Development Roadmap, but also to take this opportunity to tell you that today is a very important day for me and my ministry, because the first project that was signed when the new Gambia emerged was the Youth Empowerment Project of 11 million, and it was done in this hall, I could remember. Issues there then, it was very thorny, but with the support from the EU and other partners, we were able to muster courage. Working with the Youth Empowerment Project, we are able to come today to come up with a very comprehensive strategic roadmap that is going to align itself with the National Development Plan of the Gambia, which is today being launched by His Excellency President Adama Barrow. Is indeed great for me and for my ministry. For the fact that this document, I would urge all of you, the young people, develop the culture of reading, develop the culture of being proactive, and develop the culture of going out to fish for documents that are going to shape your life. You don't have to listen for people to feed you with what they think, but the documents are there for you to see what is relevant to you, for you to be able to make use of them and engage constructively. So today, you have the National Development Plan with its 8 priorities and 7 enablers, including the document in itself, in its abridged version. You have the bigger version also. You can get it from the Ministry of Finance, including the strategic roadmap that you yourselves have created for the future, for yourself and the future. I believe you are the leaders today and the future. So engage yourselves, do what you can, and let us move towards a positive direction. Everything will be fine. Let us not be dynamites. Don't be dynamites. What you need to be is to be innovators, actors, proactive people who could go out and make sure that you go for what you want and unleash your potentials. The Gambia has emerged from a difficult situation, and every efforts that are being made in this country is to respond to you, the current leaders and the future, and to shape the Gambia beyond us. So I will urge you to make use of this opportunity and to say thank you very much to all our partners and donors and friends, and to you who are actually shaping the new Gambia. You have the opportunity. Let us engage constructively and make sure that the Gambia is a place that will make no child wanting to leave. But if you leave, it's going to be out of your own volition, and you leave to go because you want to explore and not to go out to look for greener pastures, because it is here and it is possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.